The reason your doctor prescribes you a pill instead of a plant traces back to one decision made by one man in 1910. That man wasn't a doctor, he was an oil tycoon. And what he did to medicine was exactly what he'd already done to oil. By 1911, John D. Rockefeller controlled 90% of American oil refining through Standard Oil. He was the richest man alive, and he had a problem that had nothing to do with oil. When you refine crude oil into kerosene and gasoline, you get a byproduct, a thick, useless waste product called coal tar derivatives, petrochemicals. Nobody wanted them. They were piling up. They were costing money to dispose of. Then a German chemist discovered something that changed everything. These petrochemical waste products could be synthesized into drugs. Rockefeller looked at that discovery and saw something most people completely missed. He didn't see medicine, he saw a second monopoly. Here's what he needed to pull it off, and this is the part that will make your jaw drop. In 1900, American medicine was chaotic and genuinely diverse. There were homeopaths, naturopaths, eclectic physicians, herbalists, osteopaths. Over 150 medical schools teaching wildly different approaches. Some were excellent, many were terrible. But the key word is plural. Medicine had competition. The American Medical Association, the AMA, existed, but was weak. Only 8,000 members, little political power, no standardization. Most people treated illness with plant-based remedies, many of which worked. Willow bark for pain, which is literally aspirin. Foxglove for heart conditions, which became digitalis. The knowledge was old, the results were real. But here's where it gets strange. None of these treatments could be patented. You can't patent a plant. You can't own willow bark, which meant no one could monopolize it. Petrochemical-derived drugs could be patented, owned, priced, controlled. Rockefeller understood this in his bones. He'd built Standard Oil on exactly this logic: control the infrastructure, control the product, eliminate the alternatives. So in 1909, he funded something that looked, on the surface, like pure philanthropy. He commissioned a man named Abraham Flexner to conduct a comprehensive survey of every medical school in America. Flexner wasn't a doctor, he was an educator. His brother Simon was a Rockefeller Institute researcher. That connection mattered. The Flexner Report was published in 1910, 346 pages, and it would quietly dismantle the entire ecosystem of American medicine within a decade. The Flexner Report graded every American medical school. Schools that taught pharmaceutical-based medicine scored high. Schools teaching homeopathy, naturopathy, eclectic medicine scored catastrophically low. Flexner called them diploma mills, quackery, dangerous to the public. Was he entirely wrong? No, some of those schools were genuinely terrible. But here's the mechanism nobody talks about. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie used the report as a funding weapon. They announced massive grants, millions of dollars, to medical schools, but only to schools that adopted a specific curriculum, one built around pharmaceutical intervention, one that treated the human body like a machine with broken parts, each requiring a specific chemical fix. Schools that didn't comply couldn't compete financially. They closed. Between 1910 and 1935, the number of medical schools in America dropped from 155 to 31. Think about that. In 25 years, 124 medical schools gone, wiped out. Not because they were all bad, because they taught the wrong kind of medicine, wrong for Rockefeller's business model specifically. It's exactly like if Amazon decided to fund only certain kinds of retail education, defunded everything else, then wondered why every trained retailer in America happened to only know how to use Amazon's platform. And this is what nobody tells you. The AMA, the American Medical Association, became Rockefeller's enforcement arm, not through conspiracy meetings in dark rooms, through something more elegant and more permanent: accreditation. The AMA gained the power to accredit medical schools, and their accreditation standards perfectly mirrored what Rockefeller's money had already built. The circle was complete. By the 1930s, a doctor who wanted to practice natural or herbal medicine couldn't get licensed, couldn't get hospital privileges, couldn't get insurance coverage. The entire infrastructure of legitimacy had been redesigned around one model. Here's the twist that reframes everything. Rockefeller himself, personally, relied heavily on a homeopathic physician named Dr. Hamilton Bigger for most of his adult life. He lived to 97, while funding the elimination of the very medicine his own doctor practiced. The irony isn't just biographical, it's the whole story in one sentence.
By 1925, Rockefeller had donated over $100 million to medical causes, roughly $1.7 billion in today's money. He funded universities, research institutes, hospitals. He built the infrastructure of modern American medicine with genuine financial generosity. And that's what makes this genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. Because some of it was real progress: germ theory, surgical hygiene, vaccines for genuinely deadly diseases. The pharmaceutical model produced things that saved millions of lives. Antibiotics alone, derived from this new system, arguably changed human life expectancy more than any intervention in history. Rockefeller didn't create bad medicine, he narrowed medicine. He made it one thing instead of many things, and the thing he made it happened to be built on a raw material his industry controlled. Here's the number that crystallizes it. In 1900, pharmaceutical drugs were a minor part of medical treatment. By 1950, they were central. By 2000, the global pharmaceutical industry was worth $390 billion annually. Today, it's over $1.4 trillion. Every dollar of that traces a direct line back to the infrastructure Rockefeller built and funded. The cost, and there is always a cost, was paid by anyone whose condition responded better to approaches that got defunded, delegitimized, and driven out of mainstream practice. Chronic illness patients told their lifestyle factors didn't matter. Patients prescribed medications that treated symptoms while the underlying condition worsened. Treatments that couldn't be patented, that therefore attracted zero research funding, that therefore technically didn't work because nobody was paying to prove they did. One physician, Dr. Richard Cabot of Harvard Medical School, wrote in 1926 that American medicine was becoming dangerously focused on treatment over prevention. He was largely ignored. He was right. Rockefeller died in 1937. The system he built didn't die with him, it deepened. But by the 1970s, something started cracking. Senate investigations into pharmaceutical pricing revealed that drug companies were charging Americans dramatically more than the same drugs cost in other countries. In 1976, congressional hearings exposed that the FDA, the agency meant to regulate pharmaceutical safety, had a revolving door with the very industry it regulated. Senior FDA officials routinely left government for high-paying pharmaceutical industry jobs. The system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed, for the people who designed it. And then came the moment that shifted public consciousness in a way Rockefeller's infrastructure couldn't fully suppress. The National Institutes of Health, America's premier medical research body, opens the Office of Alternative Medicine, a tiny department with a $2 million budget, surrounded by skeptical colleagues, tasked with actually studying whether non-pharmaceutical approaches had merit. It was almost an insult in how small it was, but it existed. That mattered. By 1998, it became the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine with a $50 million budget. Today, it's the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, with over $150 million annually, inside the same NIH that Rockefeller's funding helped shape. The octopus, it turns out, doesn't have a completely rigid grip.
The United States spends $4.5 trillion annually on healthcare, more per capita than any country on Earth, and ranks 43rd in life expectancy globally. That gap between spending and outcome is the living legacy of a system optimized for treatment, not health. The 10 largest pharmaceutical companies today are worth a combined $2.5 trillion. Their lobbying spend in Washington exceeds that of the defense industry. The revolving door between the FDA and pharmaceutical companies that Congress flagged in 1976 still spins. And every medical school curriculum in America still centers the pharmaceutical model that Rockefeller's money installed over a century ago. This isn't conspiracy, it's infrastructure. And infrastructure is the most powerful force in the world because nobody notices it until they need it and it fails them. Here is the question I want you to sit with. If the most profitable version of medicine is one where you're treated but never fully cured, where you manage a condition for decades rather than resolve it, would you know the difference between that system and one genuinely designed to make you well? And if you couldn't tell the difference, who benefits from that? Drop a pill in the comments if this changed how you see your last doctor's visit. Next video, the company that sells you the same drug at 10 different prices depending on your country, and why that's completely legal.